It's a people, it's a community, a life, it's a heart, it's a spirit.
That's my question. The heck would you want a picture of a tattoo of $1,000 on your penis for?
What makes this book so relevant, even though it was written over 100 years ago, is that it's about terrorism.
The work, sex, cars, bars, broads.
And with children, it's building on what they have. They have great imagination.
Dementia is not a diagnosis. It's a set of symptoms.
And he kept explaining to me that I wasn't gay. You cannot be gay. You just cannot.
The main thing is to be open and honest and be, true to yourself.
Hello and welcome to Talking About. I'm Jon Griffith. I'm your host, and my guest today is author, poet, and recording artist Vicki Hudspith. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Glad you could make it. In addition to all that, you're also the president of the board of directors of the Poetry Project.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Poetry Project?
The Poetry Project is an organization, a nonprofit organization located at 2nd Avenue and 10th Street in St. Mark's Church, and was founded roughly 35 years ago as a counterbalance to the academics, the early beat poets, Allen Ginsberg, and various people like that founded it, and it's still going. We offer workshops, readings twice a week.
Okay, well, let's start with the workshops. What kind of workshops are available?
There are workshops 3 times a week at the Poetry Project, and usually there's a prose workshop, two poetry workshops, and they vary according to which poet is running them at the time. They're usually staffed by very well-known poets and authors, and are offered at a very reasonable rate, so that people who are either accomplished writers and just want to get together and talk to people, or new poets can come and learn about it. That was
going to be my follow-up. So just anybody who has an interest,
absolutely,
can really just sign up and.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, and you mentioned workshops also. We just readings.
Yeah, and there are readings twice a week on Monday nights and Wednesday nights at the Poetry Project. Monday nights tend to be emerging poets,
okay,
younger writers. Wednesday night tend to be more established poets, although occasionally an emerging poet and an established poet will get put together on a Wednesday night, and they're at 8 o'clock from October through June.
Okay, and it's available at thepoetryproject.com or .org?
I believe it's .org.
There'll be a link on the talking. There'll be a link on our website, and I'll have that up. It's www.talkingabout.info, and I'll have that website up at the end of the show again, and there will be a proper link to exactly where you should go at the end of the show. And there are also publications.
The Poetry Project publishes an anthology on a yearly basis called The World, okay, and it also publishes a newsletter 5 times a year that goes out internationally, a print newsletter.
Okay, and is that, by newsletter, is it just news about appearances, or
it's the calendar of monthly events, and it's also reviews of books. It's listings of every publication that comes in, so that people can see what's new, what's coming out, what's available, and a little bit of chatty news.
Okay. And how did you get involved in the Poetry Project?
The Poetry Project was the place where the writers that I studied in high school frequented. When I came to New York, that's where I went, because Ted Berrigan, Ann Waldman, who were all writers that I looked up to, were based in the Poetry Project. And so I sought out that venue.
Where did you come from originally?
Iowa.
Iowa. Okay. And once you got involved with them, how did that evolve into, president of board of directors?
Well, as Ted Berrigan said to me, stick around for 10 years and see what happens. And over time, I volunteered, which is still very much a way for young poets to get involved with the Poetry Project or any poetry venue, to volunteer their time and help out. And gradually, you become one of the senior emeritus poets who are there. And I was asked now, I guess, 10 years ago to be on the board, and then I was voted by the board of directors to be the director of the president of the board. So.
And do you still develop your work through the Poetry Project? Or
Yes, I still develop work through the Poetry Project, and I perform new work there. My role at the Poetry Project is more in the background. We have an acting artistic director who is Anselm Berrigan, who's recently hired by the board of directors. And the board, we tend to be a gentle guide in the background, and we leave it to the young Turks to come in with fresh new ideas and storm the gates of writing and poetry.
Okay. Well, but you do also actively work and perform?
Yes, I work with a percussionist who appears on my CD, Daniel Friedman. I've also worked with jazz ensembles, a rock band out of New Jersey called Manasian, which is a three-piece band. I also teach writing and performing as artist in residence with the public schools.
Okay, well, we'll go into details about that in a little more, but you are going to read a little something for us.
I'd love to.
Okay, I hope so. What is it called?
This is called Ants.
Okay.
And it's a friend of mine who's Frank Lima, who lives in Flushing, who is a very, what I call big voice poet, sent me a poem that had a classical reference to ants and their sort of archetypal place. And I took that and wrote what's more or less a funny poem telling all kinds of lies about ants and what I imagine their world to be about. And the sound engineer has the soundtrack, the instrumental soundtrack to Ants.
Okay.
If we'd like to
yes,
do it
I'd
together.
Like that whenever he's ready.
Okay.
And
Ants. Ants are not fond of margarine. Like us, they prefer butter. They don't have cholesterol problems because they don't own TVs. For centuries they've worked to take a night off and watch the Northern Lights, which is their version of canned laughter. They hate picnics, but feel compelled to attend them, or at minimum, do a drive-by chicken leg grab. Their queen is a pain in the ass. They don't love her. But without her, they would be common, so they serve her. She is an insatiable nymphomaniac. But they don't hold that against her and try to stay busy with work. Forgotten languages have been imprinted in them at birth. Like us, they say things they don't understand. They make bad marriages, but because of their outstanding physical strength, there is seldom cause for divorce. They haven't read the great philosophers, but know them innately. They love flowers, but lack perspective, and eagerly run all over them. They are much like us. They are nudists, but each ant loves their own body, despite Puritanism and a strong work ethic. They couldn't care less about go-go boots and sandals. Ants are driven by their hearts and pretend it's all in the name of duty. Ants are never impulsive. When they laugh, the gardens of old maids tremble. Ants love to dance, but with no sense of rhythm, gave it up when Homer scorned them. Rain is their sensuality. It makes them feel delirious and late, quivering and running between raindrops to their fate. So that's Ants. That's the...
and that's off of your CD,
that's off
which is Urban Voodoo.
With percussion by Daniel Friedman.
How did you begin working with him?
I've known Daniel for years and years and years, and I was going to be doing a gig with 2 conga players at the Poetry Project before another band as a kind of a warm-up, and they couldn't make it at the last minute. So Daniel Friedman was voted this spring by Drummer Magazine as one of the top 4 jazz drummers in New York City. So I called him and said, can you help me out? And it turned out we just worked perfectly together. So we've been going everywhere.
Into a whole CD.
It evolved, yes, it evolved into a whole CD, and we've traveled all around the country performing in schools and art centers in various places.
As far as schools are concerned, elementary, all levels? Or?
All levels. We did a workshop and reading at a high school in New York. We did something for 4th and 5th graders.
How do the kids react?
They love it. The kids now are very tuned into words and music going together, spoken word, because of hip-hop.
Okay.
And when they see it come together in front of them, it's like magic. And we have given them the opportunity, too, to try it out. Like we'll run a short workshop, or I'll get them to write something quick, or if their teacher has something that they've written. And Daniel's very good as a jazz musician following someone. So they get the feeling right away of what it's like to have music supporting you, which is really fun for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, songs, rap, words and music, that's all a form of poetry in and of itself. I mean, would you classify, is there really a classification for the CD?
Spoken word. It's actually
word?
Has its own category now. It's called spoken word. It's not quite hip-hop, and it's not really singing. So it kind of has slipped into its own genre.
It kind of skims the edge, but it's in there as spoken word.
That's right.
How has the disc been received?
We've had great response to it. People have said, "Oh, I didn't think I would like this," but it's each track is very different. There's everything from bossa nova to some more Middle Eastern sounding things, and it's I think easy to listen to as well as entertaining and thought provoking. So it's been well received. It's distributed through small press distribution out of Berkeley on the West Coast, and then through various websites, and then when we do performances. So it's done well.
All right.
Thank you.
It was recorded in the studio, or was
it was recorded in John Gordon's studio in New York City, and John Gordon's worked with Sheryl Crow and a variety of people. He just happens to be another friend of mine. And we traded things. You know, I got a tree cut down for him, and he recorded my CD. So we went to a real studio and did it, produced it.
Was the intent always to put it out on CD, or did it just evolve into?
It just evolved. It started with us. I had poetry readings that I was doing, and I asked Daniel to come with me, and we had 4 or 5 that we really liked. So we did those 4 or 5, and I just did a little Xerox cover for it, and I printed 200 thinking, they were gone. Like within 3 months, they were gone, vanished. So I thought, maybe we should really do this. And I talked to John Gordon. He said he would be interested in helping us really produce it.
Get it off the ground.
And then Daniel and I really went to work to produce, I think it's 14 tracks. So we went from 4 to 14 and really enlarged the scope of our project. And on one of the tracks, John Gordon picked up the guitar and played with us. He couldn't hold back, which was great. That was a wonderful compliment. But
in your work, do you do a lot of collaboration beyond the words and music?
Not really, and I think one reason poets like to work with musicians is that writing poetry is a very solitary act, and the only time it isn't is when you bring it to the public in a reading. And a reading is a very nice thing, but if you're performing with musicians, you get to rehearse, and when you rehearse, you're with people. So I think it's a really nice combination for poets to get to work with other people.
What is your reaction when you hear other people read your work?
I'm always interested to hear other people read it. I like to hear where they break the lines. I like to hear what they think is important by emphasizing certain lines. Would you like to read one? You could read one.
Well, no, but
yeah, I like hearing other people read my work.
Does it give you sometimes a different perspective on your own work?
Definitely, totally. It's things that I didn't really notice or that wasn't the focus for me in a piece becomes sometimes a focus for someone else, and that's wonderful.
Does that reveal sometimes more about you or more about the person reading it?
I guess it's the person reading it. I mean, it kind of reveals what they like the best and what they're responding to the most.
And sometimes, yeah, you don't realize you're in a certain state of mind when you're putting something to paper, and then even looking at something yourself later on, say, what was going through my head then?
Absolutely. And oftentimes when you write something, you stay glued to the central theme that was important to you, and it's not obvious until other people start reading it that a lot of times there are lots of other issues going on around that central theme, which are as valid and sometimes as important as the thing that you do.
Getting into the thought process of just creating.
Mm-hmm.
Where does it begin? And is it just a spark and then you fan it until it becomes a flame? Or
I try not to wait for the spark. I try to write every day. And I have now what I call my offices around town, which are various Starbucks. And I find that if I listen to certain instrumental music, certain kinds of instrumental music, so that I screen out the ambient noise of people's conversations, it's a really great place to write because there's a lot of visual stimulation of people coming and going and looking around. But I'm not distracted by listening to somebody talk about their shopping spree or on their cell phone or something like that. Sometimes I'll have a theme that is following me, and I know when I sit down I want to work on that theme again. I'll try to go there if I can. Okay. Sometimes I don't have any idea. I just sit down and I just start writing, and I hope that an idea emerges while I'm writing.
Stream of consciousness, kind of.
Yeah, it'll start a stream of consciousness, and then if I catch a thread, I'll try to follow that. I try not to just float for the whole time, although sometimes that happens too.
Okay, and you did bring more of your work.
I did. Mm-hmm.
Okay, would you like to run through another?
Sure. Would you like to hear another one with music from the next CD we're working on?
Okay.
All right.
Does that have a release date as yet?
It doesn't.
Okay.
And we're just putting it together. Daniel is currently on tour in Europe, and we have 3 tracks done. So.
Okay. Well, what is this one called?
This is called April 1st, and your sound man has that.
Whenever he's ready, we are ready.
Though this is the day of fools, and I may be fooled again into believing pranks of the heart, I would not hold the sky in judgment for the rain it brings, or exhale the breath you released into my lungs in an alley of graffiti and brick, as the fabled night presses against your favorite truths, which others tell you are lies. Since I do not read from the book which soaks in the depths of stillness, I am counted on as easily as a sleight of hand, forgotten phone numbers, or lost golf balls at the bottom of a game called hope. On sunny days, a window opens for 5 minutes, admitting your memory, an illogical screen on which we humans evolved, shaking hands without closing the covers of the dictionary, marked to reveal the secret lives of the ancient poets, who traveled from town to town as casually as a blown newspaper. This is the heart that pulls you toward time, buoyancy in the disguise of tomorrow, convinces you to photocopy my sigh. This day for fools is a day for love, not the pragmatic gray sky which absorbs my light heart. These 5 minutes are the gift of sight, language without resignation. This day has not come to terrify. An hour is all it represents. In each human act, we honor what we love. I swallow fire so that I may breathe the monsoon season again and caress the air with an open palm because you once walked there. Behind fatigue are smoky adjectives that describe me as sorrow. Please forgive me this juggernaut of raindrops and the luxury of a world without lies. For here I am again, not a debutante or even a doctor's daughter. Now I can tell you what happens when the sun sets and darkness folds its softened wings around the day. It is the end of the last sentence in your favorite book. I'm not the trouble of angels. I became an angel, as children without adults must do. We warm to light bulbs in a world without fire, lit by an open window's reflection. If you allow me, I'll take your hand. Someday, perhaps, I will let you take mine. For here is the force of a door banging wide, a misinterpretation of shadow, as hunters from a land of light become fearful that darkness will not comfort them through the night. Speak to me of sandwiches and colors that match. Unwind the world from its spool of secrets. Tell me it's only bread and butter with sugar on top, and let me claim the air. Tell me what food was prepared for you, how you slept, how you know the things you know before the inhalations of evening close. So that's a different
mood.
Different mood completely.
And what was the inspiration?
It was one of these rainy days that we've been having, and it was April 1st. I was thinking of April Fool's Day, and I was probably sitting in one of my offices, some Starbucks, and maybe I saw two people kissing, and I just started thinking about, April Fools and pranks of the heart and things like that.
Okay. Getting into, I don't know, the business of artistry.
Okay.
Does one make a living as a poet? Do you make a living as a poet?
I make kind of a living as a poet.
With the teaching and everything?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Is it possible, or I'm sure it's possible, but is it probable for the majority or somebody with aspirations?
It's very unlikely. It's more likely that you might supplement your poetry habit, as I call it.
Okay.
The teaching, generally speaking, when a poet does a reading, you receive an honorarium, so you can make money doing that. You can readings, teaching, somewhat publishing, but generally you have to have a day job.
Shucks.
Yeah. It's not being rock star, let's put it that way.
Right. Okay, somebody with aspirations, how would you guide them to start the path?
Read.
Okay.
Read poetry. And keep reading until you find something you really like. Read as much of that as you can, and then go to workshops and write. Don't worry about if it's good or bad, just write. And if you're reading and possibly even going to workshops, everything will come to center, and it'll all work out.
Okay.
It's sort of like in junior high when the librarian said, go ahead and ask a question because everybody else is thinking the same thing. And I think generally, if people are really writing about what they care about and it's really on their mind, it will matter to someone else too.
Okay. So, yeah, fingernail.
Yeah, definitely.
If somebody's obsessed with their nail, yeah.
Definitely. I just was reading a book today of a woman poet writing about when she was a student in elementary school. And it was very interesting. And it was very mundane, and about, you know, her mother cooking, and, you know, it can be very mundane and be very relevant and much bigger than just your thumbnail.
Okay, so
Yeah.
even this smallest seeming thing can grow into a work of art.
Definitely, absolutely, and never give up. Never, ever give up, because you have to do it. It's people need it. It's like oxygen. They think they can live without poetry, but the world needs poetry. So I would say to young poets and aspiring and just starting out poets, don't worry about what anyone thinks. Just do what you need to do.
And building on the thought that people need poetry and people need artistry, in tough fiscal times like we're in, you see a lot of arts programs being cut here and there. Can the average person do something to help that crunch, as far as reaching out to the arts and bringing it into young people's lives and bringing it?
I would say whenever possible, if you can say yes, and if you see an opportunity, try to pull artists in and include them, because it's an expansive form. Things will only get bigger by including artists in whatever project that you're doing, or ask your local community center for an arts program, or ask them, you know, for just one writer to come in, or one artist, or one musician, and it'll mushroom, because I think people like it. And they when the Berlin Wall came down, I heard a very interesting interview with a woman who had been on the other side of the wall, and she said she knew that things were getting better when people began to dance, play music, and write poetry.
Okay, and
that was the symbol for her, that the wall was down.
And that's a nice thought to wrap up on. And if people want to get in touch with you through the Poetry Project, they can visit our website, which is www.talkingabout.info, or you can write to us at Talking About, Box 20713, Floral Park, New York 11002, and that number is going to be up during the closing credits. And I really want to thank you for being here. A half an hour goes by so quickly.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us, and we will see you again next time. Good night.